Good afternoon. Thank you all for continuing to participate and engage in CUESEF. I am Khirsten Scott, a professor of language literacy and culture at the University of Pittsburgh School of Education, as well as the director of the Western Pennsylvania Writing Project. I have the absolute privilege to have thought with my colleagues about a youth panel for this year's CUESEF convening. And I've done so over the past few years. And with each year, it has been a dynamic opportunity to think about not only the youth that we are serving through education, but the youth who are impacting the futures of the education system, the histories of education, and just the meaningful impact of daily education opportunities. And so, under this year's topic of liberation and thinking about the dynamics of a city and making it very local to Pittsburgh, the work that we're imagining through urban education, we have invited a number of young adults to think with us, to be in conversation with us around these concepts of freedom and education, specifically for Pittsburgh and beyond, but especially here. And so I'm really elated that Jasmine Green from One Hood, and who's an amazing visual artist, has joined us to moderate this conversation, as well as Xavier Littlejohn from University of Pittsburgh, and Anthony Sharp, recent graduate from Carlo and now heading to Duquesne, Amber Taylor, Westinghouse High School graduate and going into her second year at Coppin State University, and Kayla Brown, who is the president of the Black Student Union at Point Park, joining us here to talk from a youth perspective of liberation and the work of urban education in our city. And so we invite you to listen and engage, but most importantly, to take this information and share it with other young people and decision makers and educators in your communities. So thank you all for joining us, and I'll turn it over to Jasmine.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Scott, for that wonderful introduction. Again, my name is Jasmine Green. I am the current director of education at One Hood Media, moving into the role of creative director. And One Hood, if you're not familiar with this nonprofit organization, our mission is to build liberated communities through arts, education, and social justice. This is an organization that was born out of both hip hop culture and community safety. Our first act as an organization being community safety walks taking place in 2006 as an alternative to more interventions that involved police presence. And so thinking about this idea of how do we keep us safe within community, how do we keep ourselves safe outside of the criminal legal system is really at the heart of everything that we do. We also find ourselves here on this panel on, beautifully Juneteenth, with the entire forum being around this idea of liberation. For those who don't know, Juneteenth is a holiday commemorating the end of chattel slavery here in the U.S. On June 18th and 19th, even though the national holiday is on the 19th squarely, as it ended in Galveston, Texas. And so under this sort of umbrella of liberation, of freedom, of envisioning our futures, the first question I want everybody on our panel, if you could answer, that would be wonderful. The first question I'm going to ask you all is, what does liberation mean to you? And anyone can start.
I'll start it off. So to me, when I was thinking about this question, there's so many different directions for me that you could go with this, but I kind of narrowed it down to, for me, it's free from all limitations. And for me, what that is economic freedom. I think that once we put ourselves in a position to where we control the jobs, we control the housing, we control the schools and what we teach our youth, to me, that is liberation, because then we are able to provide opportunities for ourselves without, the help from anyone else. We are able within our own community to provide. So for me, that's what liberation is to me. Oops, sorry.
I'll go next. I had to think a little bit hard, I guess, because liberation means something different to me personally. than maybe other people, but I guess like Anthony said, kind of the same things, but to me, it means to be free and to feel free. To me, that just means that even though we are technically free, we have a lot of limitations and a lot of things that are holding us from being fully free. And feeling free could be on a more personal level, feeling not stuck or feeling not, in a space or environment, even a mindset where you are not liberated. So to me, it is both being free and feeling free.
I guess I'll go next. I'm Amber Taylor. To me, liberation, I definitely, looked up the formal definition of liberation yesterday. And the definition was the act or process of freeing someone or something from another's control. To me, I honestly feel as though liberation first has to start within yourself. If you wait on somebody else to free you from, other things or even certain mindsets, you first have to do the work within yourself. Liberation means to be totally and completely free in all ways, physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, all of those things. And I feel as though for you to be totally and completely liberated, you have to start within.
Okay, you guys all touched on great points. So basically in my words, I basically thought of it as liberation as like having your own freedom, which you guys all touched on. And it's like, being able to like make your own decisions in a way without like being oppressed or anything, or like without anyone controlling your decisions in a way. But yeah.
And thank you. I think the through line through all of your points is this idea of self-determination, that we are the crafters, we are the conjurers of our own freedom, our own liberation. And I just kind of want to take that point to say that as we conduct this panel, I'm treating you all as experts in your own experience, as leaders, because you are leaders in various forms. And so that youth are often left out of these conversations when we talk about liberation, when we talk about city planning, when we talk about structuring our educational systems. And that is, and speaking as myself as an individual, but also on behalf of our organization, that we see that as very backwards. One of the things that I want to talk about was a study that was commissioned through the University of Pittsburgh. It was actually led by a former professor of mine, Junia Howe, who I absolutely adore. I don't know if for any of the folks in Pitt, if you have a chance to take her class, I highly suggest you do. But in 2019, she led a study with the University of Pittsburgh, City of Pittsburgh, saying that the city of Pittsburgh was the worst city for a Black woman to live. This was a meta-analysis on a bunch of different points in terms of quality of living. When it comes to Black women's ability to exist in the city, that includes maternal mortality rates, employment, healthcare, things like that. And this was very shortly after the city was named a most livable city. And so one of the ways that a lot of Black people initially countered this idea was saying, or coming up with a response saying, when you say the city is most livable, who is it actually most livable? Most livable to whom? And so from there, I kind of want to start getting into this discussion. As we're in this discussion, of course, you all can answer as you wish. If you don't want to answer any questions, that's also perfectly fine. But just to ask you, from your perspective as youth leaders, do you feel like this city is livable to you, and why or why not?
I can go first, and excuse the extra noise in the background. I am originally from Philadelphia, so there it is very diverse. There's a lot of resources, or a lot more resources than it is here. So when I first moved here for college, it was a bit of a culture shock to me. Not by much, because I'm still from PA, obviously, but I do think in some aspects it is like it is livable and it can be more livable, if that makes sense. Like, for example, the Juneteenth parade that was last weekend, that was very nice. I just got caught in a crossfire. So, but also, like, during, I think there could be more things that Pittsburgh as a whole could like do to contribute to our community, especially since there isn't many, in my opinion, there's more there's not many people of color here, and there's not many resources for those people. And I think that being from Philly and seeing the resources that we have, I think there always is potential to gain more. I'm not sure because I haven't been here for that long, so I'm not sure what that would look like as far as a citywide thing. But as a student leader, it's a little bit hard to help other students adjust because Point Park is located downtown in downtown Pittsburgh, so we come across all types of people, and it's a little bit hard to navigate and to help others navigate it. So I think maybe even more resources in our schools. If we can do something, if we can't do something on a bigger scale, Pittsburgh wise, then maybe in schools they can provide a little bit more resources to help students that are out of town or maybe not from PA, because I see that a lot of people struggle when they come here. But that's only from a Point Park perspective, and just a little bit that I've been here and traveled around Pittsburgh and the differences to me. I don't know if that answered the question, but yeah.
Sorry, but yeah. So I guess I'll go next. If you hear the printer in the background, please ignore it. But I feel like yes and no. So I definitely think that you can live in Pittsburgh, but I don't think you'll feel totally alive here. And by what I mean by that is that just because I live here doesn't mean I constantly feel safe here. It doesn't mean that I feel like I can thrive here. It doesn't mean that, I feel like I can be my best self here. When I was transitioning from high school into college, it was very important to me that I didn't stay in Pittsburgh. Only because of the fact that I feel as though Pittsburgh can be very suffocating. And by suffocating, I mean there are so many limitations that you have to go through before you're able to say, okay, well, I feel comfortable now. I feel as though Pittsburgh does not allow you to have that level of comfortability for long, especially, growing up here. I'm from Homewood originally, and then I moved to Wilkinsburg. So living here for the past couple of years and even going to Westinghouse, you definitely see the differences as a Black child in Pittsburgh compared to that of a white child in Pittsburgh. Even in the Pittsburgh Public School District, a school that could be a couple neighborhoods over has way more resources, has way more, better technology, more books, more papers, more this and that. So Pittsburgh has a problem. And I really feel as though in order to achieve, total and complete liberation in Pittsburgh, you first have to address the things that are swept under the carpet or the skeletons that are in the closet. Even with, just growing up here, like I said, you see the difference. You know the difference, even though it's not really talked about or it's overlooked, you still feel like, okay, well, I can't fully be myself. I can't fully be a child in Pittsburgh because even as a child, a Black child, you're labeled as an adult. I remember a few years ago, right at the start of the pandemic, one of my friends was killed and he was 15 at the time. And in the news article, it doesn't say a 15-year-old child, it said a man. He wasn't a man. So living in Pittsburgh, it's like you're held at these different levels in which one, we're not, able to fulfill. I'm not an adult, so I shouldn't be able to be labeled as an adult. I shouldn't have to be fulfilling a position as adult. as a Black child in Pittsburgh, you're not able to, fully enjoy your childhood because you do have these, things in the back of your mind, like, okay, am I going to make it to be an adult? Am I going to have that support from my city to where it's like, okay, I can go play outside. I can go to these parks without having to get pushed out of the park by the police. With so many things and factors that go into us feeling as though we are not totally free. And until people are, bold enough to say these things or, able to be on certain platforms to say these things, nothing is going to change. So all in all, to answer the question, I feel as though I can live here, but I don't feel alive here.
I think the last part of your question was great when they say livable for who. And I always, when I hear those conversations, I realize that those conversations aren't directed towards Black and brown people in the community. Those are directed towards white people because it's not livable for any of us. I did some research and came across some numbers. The median household income for a white family is 71,000 compared to the Black family, which is 37,000. And Pennsylvania or Pittsburgh actually is one of the worst states when it comes to home ownership for Black people. They're actually fourth worst in out of 250 metropolitan cities. That is crazy to me. It is just insane. And you also brought up a great point when you're talking about how it's very unlivable for Black females, especially. And for Black females alone in Pittsburgh, their poverty rate's 5 times higher than a white woman, and it's worse than 85% of the cities across America. Like it's just mind-boggling that the conditions in which we live in and how we're excluded from these conversations. And as you look through the decades, the Black population in Pittsburgh is declining because they're just slowly gentrifying and pushing everyone out. And I think we're not in these conversations for a reason, and that's a problem. To me, that's an issue. So it's not livable for us because they don't want us here, but we are here, and this is it's yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's definitely unlivable to an extent. And just to touch on like the gentrified areas, I was actually going to bring that up. I don't know if you guys are from here or not, but if some are from here, there used to be like a big housing complex right behind Target, but then they like tore that down and like gentrified the whole area and pushed everyone out. Then the prices of rent, it's got sky high was rocketed. So it's like, how can like we all afford that? And just living like in Pittsburgh, like as a Black male, you have to work 20 times harder. So it's like that's another thing that's hard to do. And also like if you're like a child, like if you're a younger youth, they also like kick you out of like certain businesses after a certain time. I know it's like a question we'll talk about later, but it's like how can you like enjoy and have your freedom if you can't stay in certain areas after a certain time? And I actually have experience with this. So I was actually at Kinu with my younger cousin and we took a step outside the park. Then I tried to come back in and they were like, I had to be 21 or older to bring my younger cousin with me. And I'm 19. I still can't bring them in there. So it's like we couldn't even enjoy our full day at Kennywood. So it's like definitely unlivable to an extent.
And what's remarkable about that is like you're like an adult, a legal adult, 19. You should even if you because it's a amusement park, it's for children. So you should be able to fully enjoy it. But the fact that not even being a legal adult entitles you to the right to return, I think is it's abysmal. And actually for Amber and Xavier, you touched on the question that I'm gonna merge into next. For those who aren't familiar with the neighborhood East Liberty, like Xavier was talking about, it is a historical Black neighborhood here in Pittsburgh that over the past, I would say 5 to 7 years, approximately has gone through a very active phase of gentrification. I am a, native born Pittsburgher. I've lived in like East Liberty for a time. I've lived in Wilkinsburg, but this is my city. I've been here. And East Liberty to me as an adult is completely unrecognizable to the way it looked when I was a child. And so there was an incident about 3 years back where there were a group of teens who had, because again, the city or the neighborhood looks completely different from the one that they may have lived in a couple of years ago. who were trying to find something to do because a lot of the spaces that used to be, quote unquote, third spaces, places where kids could go just to get some steam off, had been removed, and they've been replaced with commercial spaces like Target. And teens after school just trying to get some steam off, went to the Target, playing around. Apparently there was a fight that had broken out. The teens were pushed from the Target out by security and went to a local park. And we were called down as an organization, One Hood, just from local concerned citizens, parents just making sure that the kids were okay. When we got to this park, that is just a 3-minute walk away from Target, called Liberty Green Park, we were met actually by a line of police officers who were standing off against the children. And when we, one of the first things we did was get in between because we didn't feel incredibly safe. When we had a conversation with them, they're saying like, oh, we spend about our third of our shift pushing the kids out of the park, saying that because like the kids would bring speakers, trying to relax with their friends, that they were violating the amplified noise ordinance. And so this actually, and as a cause of that, they were like saying like, hey, the kids need to have a permit in order to be here, which is ridiculous that kids would need a permit to occupy their local park. And so this blossomed into this beautiful event because we decided to take charge, get a permit over the summer. For the past 3 years, we've had this event called Fridays on Deck, where we've provided free food, arts and education activities, STEAM activities, athletics, health and wellness resources, and safety training. And so to kind of like use that as an example, I wanted to ask all of you again as youth leaders that we've seen, especially over the past 2 or so years, many policies, both in private and private businesses and local government, that push teens out of private places or out of public places. These are things like age-based curfews and sound ordinances, and as a result, police are often called to enforce these policies in order to enforce this removal. As youth leaders, do you agree with this approach? And if not, what are some other ways that we can engage with teens in these scenarios?
Okay, I really like this question because there is a ongoing rise of violence amongst teens, especially with the ability to gain a weapon at a young age. I think that, to me personally, I get a thing of curfew to keep the kids off the streets, but in order to keep them off the streets, there has to be some engaging activities for them, like summer camps or after school things, or even big activities or big events that they want to go to that will help them like shift their focus, if that makes sense. I'm not that old, I'm only 21, so I was recently a teen. I was a homebody. I stayed in the house. I stayed in the house. So, but I knew that I loved being outside playing with my friends, at least. I loved being at the playground. I loved going places. I mean, I didn't go nowhere because I was in the house, but I loved being with my friends outside, but in a safe environment. So I feel like if there is other things that are provided for teens to do in their time, in their free time, because teens have free time until they have adult responsibilities to take care of. And unfortunately, a lot of teens that I've seen, just in Pittsburgh, because I work with preteens and, that age range, they don't have enough support or don't have a support system. They might be coming from rough homes, so they might have to grow up pretty quickly. So I think if there is something there for the teenagers to occupy their time, that could decrease a lot of things. And that's also speaking to where I'm from as well. We have a extremely high rise in violence, and it's just gotten to the point where it's scary to live there. And I love Philly, and I've grown to have a liking for Pittsburgh, but it's ridiculous. And I think that they just need those events. They need those supports. They need those things. And I don't necessarily agree with those limitations due to that fact, because what else are they going to do? So if you're feeling like you're trapped, you're going to want to escape. So if those rules and regulations are trapping you in, then you're going to want to go against those rules and maybe do something reckless. And that's the norm now. So sorry that was long, but yeah.
Just kind of touching on what Kayla said, I definitely agree with a lot of her points, but I don't, agree with the curfews and things like that. Like, I get why they're in place to keep us safe and things like that, but at the same time, people have to realize you have to let a child be a child. That's number one. And you can't really put all of the blame on children for the dangerous activities that are going on and them having access to weapons and certain behaviors, because of the fact that if you continuously push children out of places where children should be allowed to be children, they're going to be adults. And that's just very prominent in the Black community. Children aren't allowed to be children. When I was younger, growing up and stuff like that, my family would tell me, stay in a child's place. And I feel like a lot of the time, children don't have a child's place to be in. If you're pushing me out of the park, where am I supposed to go? You don't want me in Target. You don't want me in your Starbucks. You don't want me, all of these different places. But when I go where I'm supposed to have an outlet, where I'm supposed to be a child, if I'm not allowed to go there, where else can I go? I feel as though a lot of the time it's very hard for people to even be able to, say what they need or say how they feel because they don't have that support system. A lot of the time there's multiple children in homes where it's not, common for that child to get a lot of one-on-one time because they have brothers and sisters. So they go to the park to escape or go to the park to just, relax after a hard day of school, and to be met with police officers is insane. For them to tell them, you have to have a permit in order to come to the park. It's a public playground. What do you mean I have to have a permit to swing on a swing? That's insane to me. And instead of, like Kayla said, having other places to go, they have nowhere else to go. So they don't have these places where, I feel as though Pittsburgh is very, how do I want to put this? They cater to adults. I'll say it like that. There's a lot of adult spaces where, you can have fun as an adult. You can go to the strip district, different bars, clubs, all types of stuff. You can go downtown. There are many spaces in Pittsburgh where adults can go to wind down. But as soon as a child that's under 18, even under 21, because once you hit 18, you're like, okay, I can go out. No, you can't. You have to be 21. So 21, and under, you don't really have those outlets for yourself. You don't have those outlets where you can go and just wind down after school. When I was in school, we had multiple tests. We had pop quizzes, we had keystones, we had SAT prep. So you're spending 8+ hours a day at school being, stressed out by certain things and test anxiety and things of that nature. And you have no outlet where you can go after school, and they expect you to just be okay and keep pushing through and keep doing the things that you need to do as a child, and you're not able to do that. If Pittsburgh had places where, children were able to unwind, and that's why, I'm thankful for Dr. Scott, because she had a program called Hype Media, where I went from 9th grade to 12th grade. So I was really thankful for that, because she gave me that outlet where I could just be a Black girl unapologetically with other Black girls my age. There are certain programs, but if programs don't get the funding they need or the advertisement they need, nobody knows about them. So I feel as though overall, as a whole, Pittsburgh needs to definitely have more spaces for youth and teenagers. And they also, need to advertise the spaces that they already do have, because a lot of the times it's not that children aren't interested, they just don't know about it.
Amber, you brought up a great point this is where kind of where my mind went when I was looking over this question. You're talking about, the one-on-one time at home that these kids aren't receiving, maybe not receiving that attention at home. I came across an interesting study that was done at UMass, and it was actually done with a lot of groups in Pittsburgh as well. And they found that 56% of the Black families in Allegheny County are headed by a single mother. And that to me is just over half of these children growing up in Black homes are headed by a single mother like that. And you brought up the point, like they're not maybe getting that one-on-one time at home, and now you compound that with the fact that they're taking away these places for them to retreat to be kids, and they don't get that space and that opportunity anymore. And then even like Kayla said, like, kids can't be kids anymore. You're already growing up in an environment of high poverty rates and things like that. You're exposed to a lot more than what the average kid is being exposed to. So now you're funneling them towards it instead of giving them a place to retreat to. And I think that's the biggest problem in my eyes is with it all. To me, it's we have to get programs and policies in place that help kids be kids and help Black parents be parents, help them be able to be parents to the best of their abilities and not have to worry and stress and work odd hours and weird hours. I have countless Black friends in Pittsburgh whose parents work from 5 p.m. to 6 a.m. the next morning. That's a large gap, like, of time just to spend by yourself. And now it's already a single parent home. Like, now you have nowhere to go to be a kid, and it's just so many compounding factors that people oftentimes forget about. So it's like, yeah, it's just they're just building a Target and knocking down a little playground, but for these kids, that's their retreat place. That was their safe haven. That was their place to be a kid, and now you're taking that away from them. And now what do they have? Now they can't even go to, like you said, can't even go to a Starbucks and hang out because of these ordinances that are in place. And one of the something they always say, especially I was a political science major, so we talked about policing a lot. And they say the most difficult balancing act of policing is being effective without infringing on people's rights. So you add this to a place when you're dealing with minorities who are already at a higher chance of their rights being infringed upon. It's just so many factors that you're just not setting them up to succeed. So these ordinances and policies are just an excuse for police and the people to over police in these areas and continue to try and get them in the grasp of police and try and from a young age just to institutionalize these people, these Black kids. And to me, I say all the time, there's nothing white America loves more than an institutionalized minority. And I stand by that 100%.
Yeah, y'all all brought up great points, but like in terms of like the curfew, I definitely don't agree with it. I mean, I understand it, but like the curfew is like unrealistic in some areas. Like for example, I know in River One you have to be gone by 6. Like, what are you supposed to do for the rest of the day? I don't know about any other areas, but I'm like, like what are you supposed to do, especially on the weekend? But like in terms of like more youth areas, like maybe they could like extend the hours of like maybe the library. I know some places are closed on Sundays. Maybe they can open up on Sundays. But then that goes like in terms of like funding. So maybe we could put like more funding in terms for like youth related activities. So like they can stay out of the streets and like there could be like less violence because like there's more activities for them to do.
Yeah, and I like that through all of your answers, it's this idea, and I think, Amber, you hit it squarely on the head, this idea of like letting kids be kids. That even if we do provide these guardrails of saying like, you can't be in these particular places at the certain time, what alternative do we have in place? And so that actually makes me transition into this question talking about the school to prison pipeline. So for those who aren't familiar, this is a term that addresses the ways that, institutions of learning act as wings of the system of law enforcement. One aspect of this is the SRO, otherwise known as the school resource officer, who is an actual like officer of the city who is stationed within a school. And they're often utilized in disciplinary action, which disproportionately funnels Black children into the criminal legal system at an early age. With this, I actually want to give a big shout out to Black Girls Equity Alliance, which is a nonprofit like research wing of Gwen's Girls, who does amazing work talking about the way that the school to prison pipeline affects specifically Black children here in Pittsburgh. They have a lot of amazing studies, and they print these and make these available for folks. So definitely check out their website where you can see all of the studies that they've done to this date if you are interested in learning more. But with this question talking about SROs and this idea of utilizing the criminal legal system in ways to discipline children, Black children specifically from an early age, if you were to envision a future that is different for how we handle discipline in school, what would that look like to you?
So me personally, I actually had a lot of conversations about this in high school. I was a part of Student Voice, so a lot of my concerns I would talk about. I'm not the type of person to just sit back and watch something happen and not speak on it, especially if I know it's affecting people around me who cannot speak up for themselves. So I feel as though the school to prison pipeline has definitely been implemented very heavy, especially within the last couple of years. Um, I honestly had many conversations with the previous principal of Westinghouse High School with this. And I told him, you have to show them a different way of handling conflict because a lot of the time the excuse is, oh, well, they were fighting, so they got suspended. Oh, well, they were fighting, so they got expelled. Oh, well, they were fighting. Okay, we see the common factor in these things. How do you now implement different strategies in order for them to problem solve? And when I had brought this up, unfortunately, I was met with the statement, well, they know better. And my response to that was, you cannot assume that people know better because you don't know what they're seeing outside of school. You don't know what they're seeing in the community around them. And then on top of that, if you are a school and you want to show them better ways in how to handle things, you're here to teach them. So you have to teach them how to effectively use their words or use communication in order to problem solve instead of always resorting to, okay, well, I tried to tell this teacher, they didn't listen, so now I'm gonna put my hands on this person. It is always, seen as, oh, well, they put their hands on them. Okay, well, what happened before that? They told 5 teachers, 2 administrators, a counselor, had a mediation, this, and this, and then they fought. Okay, well, how could this have been prevented before doing all of this? And even, as early as in kindergarten, in preschool, showing them how to use their words. Because if you wait until, they are in high school, or if you wait until they are in middle school, yes, they are still learning and growing, but at the same time, it's going to be harder to implement things once they have seen something go for so long a certain way. I feel as though, you have to start at a young age explaining to them, like, okay, it's not okay to do these things. In order to problem solve, in order to hear, have your voice be heard, you have to communicate in different ways. And also, with going in hand with communication, people say communication is key, but to me, comprehension is key. Just because you communicate about something, if somebody doesn't understand it, they're not going to get what you're talking about. So no matter how many times you suspend them, no matter how many times you expel them, if they're not understanding the root of the problem, nothing is going to change. So if you want these kids to effectively, because a lot of the time they say this is a punishment, so they learn their lesson. What lesson are you trying to teach them? Because at this point, it's just giving, okay, you want to be violent, or you label them as a violent person, or you label them as a, outlawed person, like whatever you want to label this person as. Once you give that person a label, instead of breaking down the consequences of their actions or telling them that their actions are unacceptable, you now put this in their mind, okay, I'm this person, I'm that person, I'm a bad person, or I'm a violent person. That then becomes their personality. If you continuously tell a person something for so long that's negative, they're going to start to adapt to it, and that's going to become the person that they are. Not because they are truly that person, not because they can't be a better person, but because of the fact that you project something onto them instead of sitting them down and teaching them, like, hey, it's not okay to do this. This is why it's not okay. You can put other people at risk. Instead of doing this, try to talk to the person. And even when they come to, administration or teachers, as, to tell them, well, this is bothering me or this is happening, instead of being a teacher or being an administrator and pushing them to the side and worrying about your paperwork, you should take time and talk to the student. You should see where they're coming from. And a lot of the time, violent situations aren't because the person wants to be violent. Sometimes it's mental health. And I see that, in white schools or in, more different areas or whatever, people oftentimes say, well, well, their mental health, or, mentally or emotionally. Yeah, you say that for other people, but for children of color, that's never a factor. They never sit you down and say, well, how have you been feeling? How is things in your home? And even if they do ask you about things in your home, it's always, oh, well, are you being abused? Do you need to be? Sometimes it's not abuse. It's just reality. Me having a single mother, like my mom is a single mother. She has 5 children. I am the oldest. So I've seen, my mother work 60 plus hours a week and still have to come home and deal with us and deal with the bills and deal with X, Y, and Z. And people don't realize not only is it taking a mental toll on her, but when a parent is mentally exhausted, how can they show up for their kid? They can only do so much. And it's the fact that, because of these factors, unfortunately, sometimes children do have behavioral issues. But instead of getting to the root of the problem, they are so quick to punish them so that they learn their lesson instead of looking through their background and seeing how they can help them.
I'm so sorry. I tried to get to it first. That was beautifully said. You kind of said everything I wanted to say, like to a T. But to add on, I don't think people understand you have to explain. You have to explain it to these kids, to these teenagers. It doesn't matter. Even as adults, we need explanation because as teenagers, especially environments where they don't get much support, they don't know, they're not comprehensive of their actions maybe, or they might think it's normal to be that way, or they might think it's normal because they've seen it on social media. And so with me, especially with younger kids, you have to explain it. You can't just discipline and then send them on their way. Obviously, bad, or not even bad, but negative actions cause for consequences. So it's a cause and effect, but you teach them that. And in school, they do not teach you, especially high school and middle school, they do not teach you life skills, which in my opinion harms the child, no matter if they're kindergarten or in 12th grade. And I graduated during the pandemic. And just because I did my own research, I knew I was a little bit more self-aware than others were. So especially because I didn't get to have a childhood. So I was very self-aware of my surroundings and very understanding of that, but not everyone is. And especially in the younger generations, they're not going to be, because negativity and violence is normalized. We can't discipline kids when they don't understand what they did, or they don't understand, or they didn't get help when they asked for it, or they don't know how to express their emotions. I see a lot that it's a emotional intelligence that they're not able to comprehend, and that's why their actions lead to that. And so that's where that's where the negativity and the violence is normalized, because it may be like that at home, or it's just like that with their friends and their friends' home, or what they see on social media. So I think that it's overbearing to have such harsh consequences without the harsh positive, if that makes sense. Like, you can't have I feel like there is a gray area to life. Some people think it's black or white, and that's the same with consequences. That's the same with rewarding. Not enough kids, especially Black kids, get enough recognition for their good, for just doing positive things, for uplifting each other or being a leader. I didn't know I was a leader until I came to college, because all my life I was quiet, and the people who I felt like were leading in a direction where it wasn't okay. It was more promoting negativity, in my opinion. But I didn't have that support, and I do not see that support anywhere in Pittsburgh, in my opinion, even as a college student who begged for support, because I want to get into the criminal justice field, and I want to work with all ages. And I think it starts when you're young. If you're young and you're put in that environment, you're going to stay in that environment. If you're young and you're kept in that mindset and you don't have anyone around you, trying to teach you or even guide you, any mentors or programs or summer camps or anything, if you're not put in those type of environments, you're never going to learn it as an adult, or it's going to be hard to learn it as an adult. Because I see a lot of people around me that are around my age, it's hard for them to be that type of self-aware or come to that conclusion that I have been trapped almost in this reality that I don't have to be, but they didn't have that support. So the consequences and the like the I guess like the things that the police and like having police in the school, like I get it because it's very, these days there's a school shooting left and right, and you want, it's that for safety, but the consequences I feel are way higher than the explanation part or the rewarding part or the recognition part. There has to be a good balance of it, but as humans, it's hard to have a balance. Like, it's hard to have a balance, especially in a system that was made against you. So I think that if there was, with these programs and nonprofits that are going out of their way to push for this positive, positive reconstructing instead of negative reconstructing, there should be more. And it's hard for them even to get started. It's hard for people, especially people of color, to get support from their initiatives and their events and programs and things of that nature. It's just, oh, that teen was being a hothead today, so they need to go to detention, or they need to get kicked out, or why are they getting kicked out? Why? No one's asking why. No one's trying to help them why. And then they get to a point where they can't return, and that's what leads them to the streets. And so I think it's really not enough people recognize that, which is sad. And I think has a lot to do with your last question with, and having teens have something, just any age, in that they need to have something to combat the consequences that they receive so harshly. Because sometimes consequences, it is cause and effect. You do something that was bad, maybe, I don't know if I want to use the word bad, but maybe get into a fight, then you're automatically expelled. But no one wanted to listen to the reason why. You might have been getting bullied. You might have been getting picked on, or you just had enough, or it was just one of those days. And teens especially are not allowed to have just one of those days. It escalates, and I get it. I was a teen before, and so I know it's hormones all over the place, and just having one of those days. And unfortunately, a lot of times it escalates to that point where it gets violent, but there isn't enough combating that and figuring out how we can negate that and change that, or how we can have interventions. There's zero interventions before it gets to that point. Yeah.
And I'll keep it brief because, Amber and Kayla, you guys covered a lot, but there's some things said that, I do want to talk about that. Amber, first, you brought up a great point. And, one of the things I wrote down before we had this discussion is kids sometimes just need guidance, not punishment. And I think you said it the best when you said you had this conversation with your principal and he said that they know better. Like, sometimes they don't know better. Like you said, they just need guidance sometimes. And another thing that you talked about was labels. You kept saying labels. And I feel like they love giving Black kids labels. Like, they always, oh, he's bad. He talks back. He's this, he's that. Like, they always want to give us labels when it's a negative connotation around the labels. And I think that's one of the biggest problems. And another thing that goes with these labels is they're always quick to say a Black kid's a lost cause, or he's beyond a point where he can't return, which I believe just isn't true. I think there's no kid that's beyond the point of saving, especially a kid. So to label a kid as a lost cause or just another kid perpetuating some whatever cycle that they see is, to me, just wrong, because they're a kid at the end of the day. They're still learning, they're still growing, they're still developing. And I just think these school policies that are implemented to discipline these kids are often said to make these schools a safer place, when all they ultimately do is just deny Black students an equal right to education, because they're just pushing these kids out of the schools. They're not getting a chance to learn and the capacity that they should. So to me, I always believe that if you really want to punish these kids, keep them in school. Like, keep them in school. Like, they don't, like, suspending and then kicking them out, you're just hurting them even more. Like, now that's really a punishment. Like, you're harming these kids by kicking them out of school. Keep these kids in school. And you see all these programs for kids that are overachieving and behaving correct, but why can't we get programs for kids who need a little bit more help, who are just underachieving a little bit and maybe have some behavioral outbursts because they can't control their emotions? I've had the chance to walk some different avenues of life, and one of those was, I went to a very predominantly white school, and at these schools they had counselors to talk to these kids. And when I went to a school that had a higher uptick in African Americans, you don't see this. You don't see these mental health resources and these other resources that are available to these white kids. And I think that's a huge issue. But just to piggyback off, great points, Amber and Kayla.
I mean, all had great points. I don't really have anything to add in terms of that, but I do remember a story. Like, I think this was in middle school or high school, but like one of the like security officers like severely injured like a student at like trying to break up the fight. I might have to like research it, but like I just remember seeing that and hearing about that, and I'm like, wow, that's like crazy that like a grown man did that to like a youth. It's just mind-boggling to me. But y'all all brought up great points.
Yeah, and I think also to add into everything that you all said, which was amazing. It's kind of like wanting to hear y'all speak, and hearing y'all speak with so much passion on this subject, I think is really important for folks to see. I think it's also important to keep in mind that some of this also comes down to cultural competency, that there are certain things that are interpreted as being disrespectful or things that are interpreted as being disruptive, but culturally to the child, like to the family, to the culture, are going to make sense, are not going to be interpreted these same ways. And so there's this sort of almost like discussion or connection point where the educators also have to realize or think deeply, think introspectively, like, is this just something I'm not understanding? Not that, oh, this child is doing this specifically to either harm or like call my authority into question, but also it's like, maybe it's just like, this is just a normal form of communication or interaction, or like you all are saying, that this child is asking for help, that, this child needs extra support. And so how do we work to better humanize all children within the educational system, but especially Black children that are often dehumanized, and have their cultural expressions be diminished. And so there's a question that we're not going to be able to get to today, but I do want to highlight, even though Juneteenth is a time for celebration for Pittsburgh specifically, it is also a time for mourning. This is going to be tomorrow, the 6-year anniversary of the killing of Antoine Rose II. I wanted to highlight this, and for folks to take some time to read his poem, which was shared with all of us posthumously, I Am Not What You Think, which I believe is probably one of the most sorrowfully beautiful expressions of Black boys and liberated futures. This idea that they can surpass what is placed on them, what they're told to be, and that they can, like we mentioned in our first question, that they have the right to self-determination. And so I hope folks have a chance to read through that between today and tomorrow, and just take your time processing it. But for this last question, and we're going to open it up for a Q&A. So if any of you have questions for our youth leaders here on this panel, please drop those in the Q&A box at the bottom, and we will get to those after we started from this idea of liberation, and I want to come back to it, especially again, highlighting self-determination. For this question, I want you all to think big. So I wanted to kind of end the panel on this like very hopeful note. You get placed in charge. So this is the scenario I'm placing you all in. You get placed in charge of designing your own liberated Pittsburgh. So this is something where you don't have to worry about money, about bureaucracy and red tape. You don't have to worry about construction timelines, like the city how it looks like right now where everything is down because of construction. I swear like a usual, 15-minute drive is now taking like 30, 45 minutes. You don't have to worry about any of that. All you have to do is close your eyes, snap your fingers, and when you open, you will be living in your liberated city. And this is something I would like for each of you to answer or at least contribute to. Again, I just want to thank you all for your contributions thus far. But what does a liberated city look like to you?
Did you want us to answer now or wait a little bit? Okay. So I'll go first. So when I thought about a liberated city, there's just so many different aspects to think about. Obviously the simple things. I want equal opportunity for all of the people who live in my community. My community is the people who look like me, more specifically. But I also think it's important to have a government system that has people in it that look like me as well. That when you're controlling the policies and the laws around me, these are like-minded people like me that understand where a lot of us came from, the things that we've had to endure the entirety of our lives. So to me, I would to me, a perfect liberated city would be a community where all homes are owned. There's resources for everybody, whether that may be mental health resources, drug and alcohol resources, whatever the case may be, enough government aid to help people so they don't have to stress about jumping job from job and paycheck to paycheck. Like that's not something you have to worry about, like, because it's something you shouldn't have to worry about. I think that is just the basis of what a liberated city would look like for me. Just a nice close knit community. So
Um, I want to start with peace and quiet. Like not even not metaphorically quiet. No construction. Um, no violence. No building random targets and random shopping districts and taking down homes and communities. Equal opportunity and equal pay. And I think also a liberated city would be a livable city. So that means if rent is $1,000, you make that much without living from check to check. You make minimum wage, or not even minimum wage, you make enough to live. You make enough to pay rent, get groceries, go out on the town, have a nice time, go, pay your car note, whatever the case may be. You make enough money that you don't have to think about trying to think, or I have to pay rent or I'm gonna eat. Because in in the US as a whole, that is the biggest struggle. That is why our homelessness has gotten increasingly higher. And it's because the cost of living is unlivable, it's too high. And we're not getting paid enough from hourly jobs and to live, especially in Pittsburgh. Everywhere is expensive. Just if you live not even like in East Liberty, but maybe in lower income communities, they're still too high. And it's just ridiculous that people will resort to living on the streets because they can't afford a home. And everyone, doesn't matter who you are, deserves a roof over their head, deserves to eat, deserves to have a bed to lay in or a couch to lay on. Everyone deserves the necessities, and we can barely get that. So in my liberated city, I would have that just to be able to live, because even me as a college student, I have to work two jobs just to get by. Tuition is high. I would love tuition for that to not be a thing, because the way it has me stressed, I had to move off campus in order to afford it. So I think that it starts with peace and quietness, and it starts with being able to live in the city. If I'm going to have that much control, people are going to be able to live and make enough to live in that city. Because I think that's another problem too, especially within the Black community. Since we get paid less, we can afford less. And that means we're living check to check, or we're working these long shifts, or we're taking up multiple jobs. So in my city, it's going to be a lot of pink everywhere because that's my favorite color. It's like, no, but we're going to be able to live in this city. Okay. If there, to have a child safe city as well. I think if in a perfect world, if I could snap my fingers and erase the violence and maybe help the people who are struggling, help the people who hurt other people, because hurt people hurt people. If there is more support, just like Anthony said, if there's more support and there's more, it's better support, or there's better like development in those areas, and I think this city could be popping. I don't know, like we're gonna have fun in this city.
All right, I'll go next. For mine, I would definitely, well, first I would start with like the law enforcement and stuff. I would want them to be like completely fair and everything. And so like, you won't be treated, you won't be treated like this fairly and all of that. And then I'll go into like economics and everything, like what they said, like, being able to live on like certain wages will rent be too high and everything. And just a place where you could just like be free and just do you and just not having to worry about like certain things and everything. And there was something else on there. I can't think of it. I got distracted by listening to y'all. But it's just a place where you could just be you, honestly. And also a place like where there's like no homeless people, where you could like walk on the streets and you don't see people like sleeping on the streets and everything. And everybody can have like their basic necessities and all that. I think Kayla touched on that, but yeah, that's how my city would be. And also like a place where like you see like black people holding like more professional roles, and it's not like just white people. That would also be like a great thing. It's like we need that. And it's like once you see that, it's like then like the younger generations, they could be like, oh, maybe I could do that myself. So it's like it will continue to get better on and on. But yeah.
So I feel as though in my city, there would definitely be a lot of support for single parent households, whether you have a single mother, single father, whatever the case may be. There would definitely be more support for parents in general, because oftentimes there's not a space where parents can take off of work and go to their kids' baseball game or go support their kids and stuff like that. So there will be a lot of parent support, as well as, support for children. Children can be children. In my city, I think that, there would be a lot more urban farms, first of all. Everybody talks about, oh, well, local farms because we live in Pennsylvania. Yeah, but how many farms are in Pittsburgh? How many farms are here? How many people actually have access to fresh food that's grown here without, pesticides or preserved, like things like that. I would also, just have things put in place to where people wouldn't have to worry about money. If you need certain things, I just feel as though, me personally, I feel like we shouldn't be paying for certain things such as water. It comes from the sky. Why are we paying for it? But that's just me. Like I just feel as though there are certain things that you shouldn't have to pay for. Instead of, for me, I don't think money would be our currency. I think that, everybody would have a position and you trade things. That's just me. I feel as though certain things will be taught in school, just life skills, how to apply for a mortgage, how to budget. Financial literacy would be a big, thing that would be in my schools, because I feel as though a lot of Black children and Black adults in general aren't really taught about financial literacy. They're taught, okay, you get your paycheck, you pay your bills, what now? Um, in my city, you would automatically have a savings account. How much you want to put in there, that's your business. But you will automatically have a savings account, and you will be taught in certain classes how to use that savings account, how much of your check to put away, things like that. Also, I would have, Black classes, Black people 101 for people that are Black, for people that aren't Black, whoever, you can come, but Black classes 101. There you would learn how to cornrow, you will learn how to braid, you'll learn how to install a lace front, you will learn how to take care of Black hair, things like that. You will learn how to dress. If you want to buy these threes, here are some jeans that go with these threes. Here's a shirt, here's accessories, things like that. Just different classes where you can learn how to, indulge in different cultures, not even just Black culture, but cultures as a whole, different things where you can go and experience, like, okay, cool, this is how I can cornrow, this is how I learn how to do this is how I learn how to do that, things like that. What else would I put in my city? I think I would change the way law enforcement looks. I don't think, the officers, or, whatever you want to call them, would have guns in my city. I feel as though oftentimes guns aren't really the best way to handle situations. Yes, they do protect you and keep you safe, but at the same time, it can be intimidating. So I feel as though, like Xavier said, I had to make sure it was the right person. He said he would, change the way it is to make it a fair playing field. I don't think officers have to, carry a gun all the time in order to be an officer. And certain laws I will also change as well. I know there's a lot of hate speech in Pittsburgh, and a lot of hate speech in Pittsburgh, especially, with the Black owned companies downtown. It's crazy. I feel as though in my city, you would go through classes. Once again, it will be a lot of learning, in order to make sure people are comfortable, and make sure, differences between things, what you can say, what you can't say. Because sometimes people just don't know. And other times people do have, this ignorance, and ignorance, yes, we use it in the Black community as, oh, you're rude. But at the end of the day, it really means lack of knowledge. And people do have a lack of knowledge. So I feel as though in my city, there would just be a lot of, learning experiences as to where, like, okay, well, I don't always have to go to the grocery store because I can plant this in my backyard. Or I know, oh, my neighbor, she plants this. Let me go over there and see if I can give her some of this in order to get some of that. It would be more so community based as a whole, and not just, oh, well, we having a community event today and a community event in 2 weeks. No, we would be a community every single day, learning how to depend on each other and not, count favors. Because I feel as though sometimes you feel like you can't take things from people because they're going to be like, oh, well, you have to pay me back. I would eliminate all of that, all of the selfishness in the city, all of the negativity, all of that. And I will also take away the very cold winters, because no, it's ghetto. I don't like it. No, I would take that away immediately. But, I would still let us have snow. But all that freezing on the roads and the falling down the stairs, take it away. Take it away. But other than that, that's what I would have in my city.
And Xavier, you can jump.
Okay, so now I remember what I was going to say. I would change the 40-hour work week, because we do not have to work that much. And like, you can spend more time with family, some more time with friends, some more time on like yourself, self-care and all that. Because like, no, we shouldn't have to work 40 hours a week.
I really love that in all of your visions of a liberated city, to me, what it boils down to is just this ability to thrive. Like, you're not just surviving, not just scrambling to the next thing, not just trying to like, oh, maybe I can cover these needs, but these needs are going unmet. It's this idea of when we're centering the health of community first and each individual within that community, but knowing that my health affects your health and vice versa, that it creates a city where we all can just thrive better as people. And I think that's incredibly beautiful. We did have one question from the audience. This question reads, many of you mentioned programming that would speak to the needs of Black children where they can be themselves, grow, and learn. What do you think these programs would look like? What would they offer? And when would they happen? And anyone can answer that.
Well, me personally, I feel as though these programs definitely should touch on mental health, but not in the way that people think. Because first of all, in the Black community, going to therapy or seeking therapy is very taboo. It's more accepted now, but before it was more so like, oh, well, I'm not crazy, I don't need therapy. Oh, I'm not depressed, I don't need therapy. And people don't realize therapy isn't just there for when you're sad. Therapy is there for personal goals, for personal growth, things like that. So I feel as though if I could make the perfect program, I feel as though it would implement, how to handle your mental health, because mental health isn't just when you're depressed. Mental health isn't just when you're angry. Mental health is consistent. Even when you're happy, you're focusing on your mental well-being. You wouldn't ignore your physical health, so you shouldn't ignore your mental health. The way that it would be implemented, it wouldn't be directly, well, how did that make you feel? How does this make you feel? It's not like you're talking to somebody that's just talking at you for information. It would be, dance therapy, painting, things like that, unconventional ways to get you to think about, okay, well, I'm happiest when I do this. Or, when I'm having a bad day, here's how I can make myself feel better. Oftentimes young Black men are labeled with anger issues, and it's not that they're angry, it's just that they don't know how to process that emotion. So it would be certain ways, like, my little brother, for example, when he's upset, he likes to go meditate. When he's upset, he likes to play his game. So, there are certain ways that you can teach your child about their mental health instead of just sitting down and talking at them. So that would definitely be implemented, as well as, creativity. Many art programs are getting taken out of school. And I went to an art program after school called Lighthouse. It's at the YMCA in Homewood. That was very, very helpful, not being able to talk through everything, because some people, they don't get through their emotions or talk through their emotions because they're not comfortable with doing so. So expressing yourself through art is a very, helpful thing sometimes, especially in the Black community. We express ourselves through our hair. I like to get my nails done. They're real cute. Her name is Nails by Tristan. Book her on Instagram. But, like my sister does my hair. So expressing yourself in certain ways also goes in with self-care. So I think that, mental health and self-care and creativity are definitely 3 key parts that we need in after-school programs. Oh, part of that, it will take place after school, which would also alleviate some of the parent stress of having to worry about where my kid is, what they're going to eat, things like that. Like, it will be an after-school program that will also offer meals and snacks and things like that, so that children are eating after school and they're also safe.
Anyone else?
I'll go. I'm not sure what to call this program, but it would be like extracurricular type of things. So like playing piano or sports, or maybe even fashion, cosmetology, and that will also take place after school or over the summer, because the summer, depending on county school, can last to 3 months to like 2.5-ish. And I think they still should have some activities or learning or some educational piece throughout the summer to keep that knowledge. I remember when I was a kid, when I came back to school in the fall, I was like, I don't know what I just learned. I don't I don't remember. So I think especially when I got to college, you had to major in that activity or in that thing in order to do it. And so I think I would have the more active aspect to it, and provide more resources, learning a language or learning an instrument or anything like that. I used to play saxophone since 5th grade, and I stopped playing when I got to college because they didn't offer those type of programs. And then later on in college, I found out that I could just go and look for a musical program, or I could go somewhere where they offered that, but I didn't know that because I'm not, originally from here, and I'm pretty sure that in Philly they probably have those resources, but to high schoolers, I feel like when you get to college, you're just kind of on your own. So I would provide that for all ages, even adults, just seeking to learn something new, but mostly for maybe like 5, 6 to teenage, and then, a little bit older than that. I would offer those type of programs where they are hands-on. So that also provides another way for them to not be on the streets, or to not be bored, or to not be, in things they shouldn't be into. And to also provide connections. You can connect with maybe a professor that does this on their free time, or maybe I don't know, celebrity or somebody who just likes to have those hobbies. So I think that it is that would be my program. I just don't know what I would call it. Sports, fun, kiki, I don't know.
Just to double back on what Kayla said, she talked about learning another language. One thing that I would have in my program, and also in my city, to the previous question, everybody would learn ASL. And I say that because, for people that don't know, ASL is American Sign Language. For people to, go throughout their day talking and things like that, that's not always the case for someone who is hard of hearing or is deaf. So I think that would be a very big thing, because it's not hard to learn. I took classes when I was in high school, and it's actually very fun to do and to learn. So I think that I will also implement that.
Okay, I think we can wrap it there. So I'm going to be passing it back to Dr. Scott. But before I do, I just want to thank all of you for taking your time, for trusting me as your moderator. It has been an honor to serve in this role, to help y'all have this beautiful discussion. For folks who are listening, I also want to invite you. One Hood is partnering with the Pittsburgh Pirates again to have our Artist Liberation event, which is our celebration of Juneteenth. Myself, as well as 12 other artists, will be in the stadium celebrating Black art, Black culture, and celebrating joy, liberation, freedom. And that's going to be starting at 6:40 tonight. So I know it's very short notice, but I just want to send that invitation if you'd like to come out and, have fun with us. But without further ado, I'm going to pass it back to Dr. Scott. Thank you all again.
All right, thank you so much to Jasmine and Kayla, Xavier, Anthony, and Amber for such a thoughtful, challenging, and imaginative discussion. I think when we, gather to discuss CUESEF, this is the essence of what we're hoping comes from not only the youth panel, but the overall convening, that we can really hear from people who are living daily in the city that we work in the spaces that we are educating, and the spaces that we are attempting to shape differently. And so I just want to thank each of you for offering such honest and thoughtful reflections, for taking seriously the invitation to share, and understanding the value of such a platform and the reach of sharing your voice. I hope that you don't stop using your voice, ideas, your imagination today. I know you won't, but I hope that you absolutely continue, and that you encourage other young people to do the same, that you pick these conversations up, because to imagine your city is not just something that Jasmine is presenting here. You can literally impact the things that are happening daily, and you're doing so right now, because I know for me, I was listening and taking notes about how to revise programs and initiatives that I think about every day. And there's someone else who's listening, and there's someone else who will pass this on to someone else. And so just want to express extreme gratitude to each of you, and especially to Jasmine and the work of One Hood, which was absolutely a meaningful and necessary contribution to this space. So this is not the end of CUESEF, and tomorrow will be a writing retreat that will begin at 10 a.m. And then there will be more panels and engagement to follow for the remainder of the week. I'm not sure if I should then pass it on to someone else, but I wanted to be sure to bring this discussion to an end, and encourage those of you who have joined us to continue to encourage these young people and young people around you to imagine their city otherwise, and to support them as they do so, support them directly, and to affirm them, and to be in dialogue with them, because that is how we absolutely reach the liberation that we are so desperately hoping for. So thank you again for joining, and continue to join us for CUESEF and for the work that we continue to do beyond this week's convening. Have a good one. Bye-bye.